Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is another Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
pissed off.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here.
Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being an extremist.
Crush that fly.
So this Vivek Ramaswamy, I've talked about how he has the most sincere, obnoxious, condescending smile and attitude. And he's a total tool, and he's big pharma, which you already knew. But then my wife sent me this yesterday. Here's Ramaswamy in 2015 scamming the public on his Alzheimer's drug that had already failed drug trials 4 times before he bought it for pennies. He rebranded it, took the company public in an IPO. Then he and his family dumped $2 billion worth of stock before it failed again. And so there is some backing of this story. It's called Interperdine as a potential breakthrough that could help millions of people. The potential opportunity is really tremendous for delivering value to patients. But as it says here, he made, he's got a $950 million net worth, and he made here it says here. Mr. Ramaswamy is a powerful salesman. He talked up the Alzheimer's drug Interperdine as a potential breakthrough that could help millions of people. The potential opportunity is really tremendous for delivering value to patients, he said to CNBC. We'll see that in a second. Patrick Machado, a former director of Rayovan and Avion, described Mr. Ramaswamy as a brilliant and audacious. Others said Ramaswamy was over-promising. Thanks to the public stock offering, Mr. Ramaswamy held a large and suddenly extraordinary value stake in Aroxavant, though its parent company, Roavant, was still privately held and controlled about 80% of Avoxavan. When the drug headed into a crucial clinical trial, he set out to raise more money to finance his broader ambitions with the company. In late 2015, Mr. Ramaswamy sold off a portion of Ryovant shares to institutional investor Viking Global investors that wanted in. The sale was a major payday. On his 2015 tax return, Mr. Ramaswamy claimed that more than $37 million in capital gains. So he gained lots of money off of this sale. In an interview, Mr. Ramaswamy said he cashed out only to make room for Viking, not to hedge his bet ahead of Interperdine's clinical trial. In August 2015, SoftBank led an investment of $1.1 billion in Ryovant. The investment wasn't about getting in on Oxavant. SoftBank thought Interperdine was unlikely to succeed, the person said, but SoftBank was seeking to invest in Mr. Ramaswamy's wider drug portfolio, according to 2 people with knowledge of the matter. SoftBank declined to comment. A few weeks later, the Alzheimer's drug trial failed. The stock price plunged, losing 75% of its value in a single day. The stock slid further in the months that followed and never recovered, but the company was dissolved this year. Mr. Ramaswamy declined to disclose how much he lost on paper because of the drug's failure, but he sold and he cashed out, right? He sold before the clinical trial. And so thanks to the way he structured the biotechnology empire, he did not hold direct stake in Oxavant. His personal stake through Ryovant allowed Mr. Ramaswamy to weather the storm. QVT, the hedge fund where Ramaswamy once worked, had also invested in Ryovant, insulating it from much of the fallout. QVT did not respond to requests for comment. But some investors lost real money at Exovant, one large public pension fund. I knew this was pension. I knew he took people's pensions. The California State's teacher retirement system sold its stakes a month later when it was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars less In the days leading up to the disappointing clinical trials, the fund declined to comment. But for Oxovant shareholders who lost many whom were sophisticated institutional investors, the loss was the one missed gamble on a high-stake risk and high-reward stock with large portfolio bets. So here he is with his smile. He's such a fake douche, and he's just obnoxious and condescending. He's with this guy. This guy, right? Jim Cramer, right?
Summa cum laude graduate. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Okay. Tell me why Glaxo kind of wrote this drug off, and yet you have such great hopes for it.
So I obviously can't speak for other companies other than Axovan,
Right.
but what I can tell you is that RVT-101 is a unique drug that we actually think could help millions of patients with Alzheimer's disease.
Look at this fake M&F-er, right? It's also selling hope in something.
Our focus is actually on the treatment of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and other forms of dementia. We've actually put together what I view as a top-notch team in the industry, involving the developer of the most widely used drug to treat Alzheimer's disease, who actually led our due diligence on this asset, and actually will lead our development program going forward. And actually on our board of directors.
So it had failed clinical trials 4 times. And they were doing this as like a pump and dump. That he pumped it up before the clinical trial, saying that it was going to pass and it was going to make money. He sold off his shares, protected himself against the loss, and made bank. And then when the drug tanked, which, pump and dumps do, it had nothing to do with helping people or any of these things, right? Look at this insincere M&F-er.
Is the former head of neurosciences from GSK that actually led the development of this drug, who sits on our board right now, and all of those individuals are every bit as excited as we are about the development
Well, then
of the
walk
drug.
us through what we've seen so far, because we know, as I said, there's a bunch of companies that have gone in phase 2, and we get so excited, but then it doesn't work out in phase 3. Why do you think you're ahead of those other companies that have never been able to bring that to market?
That's a great question. And the thing in Alzheimer's disease to remember, and we remember this all the time at Axovan, is we don't fully understand the way the actual underlying disease works. Not just us at Axovan, but the field more generally. But
Us at Axovan.
the thing with RVT-101 is it's actually a neurotransmitter-targeted therapy that actually in part works through the release of acetylcholine, which is already known to be an effective mechanism of action, because that's actually very similar to how the currently approved drugs work. And so the way the drug works is been demonstrated in clinical trials. In a large phase 2 study, phase 2B study, with 684 patients, multinational, double-blind,
See, he sounds sincere. If you didn't know this had already failed, he doesn't sound sincere. Let's not say that. He never sounds sincere. But he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, right? And for most people, you throw science at them, and, there's not much that they can say about it. You throw some fancy words and some scientifically technical medical jargon at them, and, the average investor is able to sell this to people, and he had some success in the past. But this is a pump and dump, right? It's a drug that failed every time it went through clinical trials. It was never released. And so he bought it for almost nothing. He did a pump and dump, made money, and he represents the worst of the worst. Think about this. He's big pharma. He's investment banker, the kind of people that caused economic collapse, shorting things, all this stuff to do with Wall Street, right? So he's big pharma, big tech, big investment banker, and now a politician, right? He's also a Satan worshiper. Those are he's got the big 4, why not the 5th one? Is there anything worse than investment bankers, big pharma, big tech, and politicians, right? And so,
placebo-controlled study. And this is the key on the pre-specified analysis, not some type of reanalysis or subgroup analysis, but on the pre-specified analysis, the drug actually demonstrated statistically significant improvements in both cognition and in function out to 24 weeks in a way that was maintained out to a full year in time. So that's actually what we think makes this such an exciting opportunity. In addition to its safety and tolerability profile, it's a really well-tolerated drug, and you take it as...
Again, taking people's pensions, taking teachers' pensions, retirement money. This is what we're talking about here. That's what these guys do. And he's also big pharma. He is, he's really into the bloop, and he endorsed Jojo Magoo making the thing. mean, this guy would be the big farmer's dream, wet dream. Like, he's even worse than the Jojo Magoo and Trump because he's still young and he's still got a sharper mind. And, I just don't think he cares about what he looks like or whatever. Like, as long as he makes some sort of, he gets some sort of deal out of this. And he would with Big Pharma. So, Big Pharma's everything right now because that has real tangible effects in terms of mandates on all of us and whatever that means in the future. And so this guy is like right now the devil, like he's the worst. Of all these politicians, he's the most dangerous. Trump wants him to be VP because he said Trump was a great president, so that's all it takes. I mean, I covered that in another video on my other channel yesterday.
Is one pill once a day, and we think that we're very excited about its development going forward.
Okay, well, let's look at it. We have to be skeptical. You were a former hedge fund manager. I would always be nervous when I would see a stock that would be as hot as this one. I don't believe you have anything else right now in the pipeline. If you were a hedge fund manager when you got in shares in this stock and you just had seen Axevent and said, would you have rung the register today?
So, I can't comment exactly on my investor seat because right now I'm actually thinking about this as the person who's developing this company.
Of course, I'm not really trying to put you on the spot, but I tell you, if I were a hedge fund manager, I got it. I would have said, geez, that was a home run.
Yes. So let me actually speak directly to it then.
Okay.
I actually think the potential opportunity here is really tremendous for delivering value to patients. There's over 5 million patients who suffer from.
Come on, patients. He does not care about patients. This was a money thing. He's a money guy. He's a billionaire. He doesn't care about patients, right? And neither does he. Nobody watching this CNBC is here to find out about how to take care of people with Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's disease in this country alone. And if you think about it, we own global rights to a drug that has already demonstrated in a large phase 2B study efficacy on the 2 parameters that the FDA has historically required for new Alzheimer's disease drugs. And actually, we believe we're only one additional phase 3 study away from the approval of this drug on a global basis.
Yeah, that never happened. Never got approved, never passed the studies.
And how long do you think, what has been the course that the FDA wants for phase 3? 6 months, a year, 2 years? What have you seen? Because, it takes a long time.
Yes, so historically, actually all of the currently approved drugs for Alzheimer's disease were generally approved on the basis of 24 to 28 week data. And that's what we think is going to be the consistent requirement.
Okay, so he laid it on thick, right? We already knew, I didn't have to show you this. You just had to see that Caitlin Collins interview with his obnoxious, condescending smile, his fake smile, and just how the way he presented himself. The valedictorian, if you see my other video where he's gives a valedictorian speech at his high school, you can tell all the other students hate him. No one's applauding. He's obnoxious. He's a total douche. And so, this is the devil right here. I'm in the editing process, and I just want to expand on this. People fall for narcissists all the time. That's why people love Trump. People who are low energy. And you can be in a low energy part of your life. Like you can just be miserable or bummed out. And a narcissist comes in, somebody with a fake smile and a lot of positive energy. And, they make you feel like, they have confidence in themselves. And if you're lost, you don't know what to do with your life. You're just kind of lost and you're just, whatever, mulling through life. You have low prana, low energy, or you're just kind of stupid or whatever. Or you're naive. I mean, there's lots of various reasons people fall for narcissists. And you might have an initial reaction to them, but then you get used to the bragging and the boasting and the self-promotion. And in our country, you almost have to do that. You have to prop yourself up. You have to, brag a little bit. I mean, our country rewards people for bragging and talking smack and telling you how great they are. And so it's something we're used to. And so lots of people like this guy because he sounds confident, sounds like he knows what he's doing. He's got what appears to be like a lot of positive energy. And when people are depressed and worried about what's going on in the future, and somebody comes in and says, yeah, I got this, and, whatever, which is a saying I don't like. Hey, I got this. You got this. You got this. But that's what people want to hear. False confidence, bravado. Americans have always liked that. But this guy is off-putting. And he's just, connected to all the bad things, doing okay right now as a new candidate. And, he's another basically billionaire out there. And, haven't we had enough of those, like, billionaires and career politicians and all these other guys? They should be precluded from running, but people buy into them all the time. So much so that people are, like, willing to die for Trump. And Trump's a horrible person. I mean, just, like, even when I liked Trump, I knew he was a horrible person. I mean, he has some, funny aspects to his personality. But he's not trustworthy. He's not nice. He's not generous. He's got all these bad qualities. And yet people think he's like some kind of hero and the best president ever. And this guy could easily win. Maybe not now, in the future, I don't know. He could be vice president. This guy could be president. And as bad as he is, and as tied as he is to big pharma and big tech and big banks and all these other things, he could still win. Okay, so let's go through the rest of this here. Buster Murdaugh finally breaks his silence 6 months after his father, Alec, was jailed for murdering his mom and his brother, denies any involvement in the death of Stephen Smith. This was a Netflix special. This took place in South Carolina. And this guy's like the lone remaining family member. His dad's in jail. His mom and brother are dead. His brother wrecked a boat and killed the girl. Was drunk. They try to cover it up, blame it on some of these other things, like some of these other friends of theirs, one of their other friends. If you saw the Netflix documentary, Buster Murdaugh has broken his silence to say he does not believe his father, Alex, killed his brother and mother, and denies having a gay relationship with a murdered school friend, Stephen Smith, or any involvement in his death. The eldest son of the disgraced South Carolina attorney told Fox Nation he doesn't think that it's possible his dad, 55, killed Maggie and Paul at their hunting estate in 2021. The guy is a very powerful, influential family, and the dad sort of ran their law firm into the ground. Had money problems. His son had they covered up this son murdering this girl, and everything seemed to go south for them. Here's the guy here.
Would you say you think the police didn't do the job?
There's an awful lot of pressure on a law
this guy isn't gay at all.
law enforcement entity to come up with a suspect.
You said that you thought they rushed to judgment because the person who found the bodies was the easiest person to charge. Why would they want to do that to your dad?
I think it's one of those things where you have to do something. And I think that it was, and that's the option and the route that they decided to go with. My biggest thing that I want people to realize that there are always two sides of the story. Now,
there are two sides of the story. And both sides of the story, you're guilty. 33-year-old Brazilian fitness influencer dies after double cardiac arrest. How does that happen? Double cardiac arrest, kind of maybe a little bit dudeish there. A Brazilian fitness influencer who was just 33-year-old tragically dies after suffering a double cardiac arrest due to unknown causes. What could it be? The pain of losing someone so young, just 33 years old, our hearts are broken. Well, not like hers. According to the local media, the popular fitness influencer with over 32,000 followers was hospitalized August 20th after suffering from her initial cardiac arrest during travels to Brazil. The incident placed influencer in a coma for a week, the family keeping her fans updated on her condition on social media. And then she had another cardiac arrest after that. So that's the double cardiac arrest. COVID-19 to blame for just 1% of the new deaths, data says. Less than 2% of the deaths reported by Centers for Disease Control and Prevention last week were caused by the COVID virus, new data shows. According to CDC's COVID-19 dashboard, just 324 deaths logged in a week, ending August 19th. Well, I think you should roll out a bunch of new laws then. There's a second wave of pandemic, 300 people are dead. And so then there was this. This is funny.
You got a second?
What's that?
I need to talk to you. What do you need?
There's a complete emergency going on and you don't believe me. And you need to go home, put on your air conditioner, keep your family safe.
Are you
Tell
safe?
everybody you know.
Are you
and
safe?
Call the news station.
Are you safe?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Go. I gotta hurry up.
Yes.
All right.
Pray for Jesus.
You, buddy.
We need
I'm
Jesus.
counting on you.
I'm going home.
You've been called.
Yes.
Your mission is now.
Thank you.
Go.
Let's go!
That was wonderful. 13-year-old faints during football practice and dies at hospital, Texas official says. Looks younger than 13. During the middle of a school football practice in Texas. And, well, this must be another cardiac arrest, right? I mean, how many of these are there going to be? Like, every day that we see, like, there's at least one young person dying of a cardiac arrest that we know about. Like, these are just things people send me and that make it into, like, national news. Slovakian swans battle drug addiction. Slovakian farmers are facing an unconventional issue. Swans are battling an opium addiction. While poppy fields paint the countryside with vibrant hues, they hide a darker secret beneath the petals. These fields, traditionally associated with the production of opium, have ensnared an unlikely victim, the majestic swans of Camarano Town. There's one there. The elegant birds succumb to the allure of opium-rich poppies while farmers grapple with protecting their crops and income. Join us as we investigate this strange debacle. No, I'm good. I think I'm okay. 15-minute city condos look more like a prison than a condo. Oh, they do now. It's not fully done, but wow, does not look really inviting, and that's when they're brand new. Wait till it starts to wear and tear with age and, all that. Meek Mill issues online plea for sick aunt who can't breathe. That's all he got. Somebody sent me that. I don't have any other news about his aunt. Mark Becker, marketing executive at Universal and Tangent, dies at 37. Was this another long battle with cancer? Turbo cancer. And then somebody sent me this, another car crashing into a house. You see, boom. It flipped over. Wow. This car is flipping over and just took out that front porch. Look at it did there. It like wrecked that whole house. That was like messed up. You see it that's flying out of there. It was going way too fast. These single women only date men who had vasectomy. Vasectoyummies, that's a new term. Generation Z women want their men tall, hot, and cut, but they're not talking chiseled arms and abs. While swiping through dating apps like Tinder and Hinge, Q Finite, a 25-year-old content creator, is looking for a guy with that special something. All right, we know vasectomy. You're just stretching it out. Plane lady, TMRFRIN, is seen getting on another plane. Man asked what she saw that day.
When you're getting ready to travel, or was there any new techniques you used?
No.
No?
No.
And a lot of people are curious what exactly you saw, because you alluded to what you saw, but like we just want to know, what did you see?
Thanks for asking that, but I have been told I cannot comment on it right now.
I see.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to
I don't know. She looks a little bit more like the girl on the plane, but I don't think exactly like her. There's some question if this is the same person. But why can't she comment on it? Like, why can't she? Who told her not to comment on it? Like, who in the world would tell her not to comment on something like that? I mean, you've been told by who? Like, you're not going to comment on, everyone wants to know, what did you see? You said the person wasn't human. So then he follows up here.
Like, what was the reason that you wanted to get off so bad?
Again, can't speak on that right now, but
I
was distressed and I was getting off the plane no matter what. I just probably didn't need to make the scene that I made.
Right.
But I was getting off that plane.
Okay. It's becoming really suspicious, kind of suspicious in the beginning, but it's something that would have went away. But now that she's emerged and people are not, you're thinking that she's the same person, and then she can't speak about the incident, now that just raises, that makes it worse. We went to high school together. Snoop Dogg was a year older than me. I remember him. He was very tall and skinny. He wore lots of ponytails. I'm pretty sure I bought weed from him. Cameron Diaz says that her and Snoop Dogg were in the same class. Now, this is interesting in a lot of ways because they were in Long Beach, and I think Cameron Diaz was somewhat wealthy, which would mean that Snoop Dogg went to a affluent California school.
Very seriously, as people should, I want you to tell our audience, without violating any of the confidentiality stuff at these SARS, what did you see there?
The SARS, if the American people could see what we saw in the SARS, and the reason that we can't come and give everybody the files is because they're confidential, and I would technically be breaking the law if I revealed the information in them, which is why I keep talking about these bank records. The bank records will prove the SARS out. The first thing that I want the American people to know is the amount of money in the alleged laundering and bribery scheme is astronomical. It is staggering. It is shocking. And it will blow your effing mind if you knew how much money we were talking about. Now, within those SARS documents as well, one of the consistent things that we saw is that the Biden family took a third cut of all the money as part of this money laundering scheme. We now know that every time Joe Biden has been asked questions about this, he has lied about it. We now know that Joe Biden also used a number of pseudonyms. We found out yesterday the National Archives now has 5,000 plus emails that include Joe Biden's pseudonyms, and he communicated with his son about his businesses. He was on phone calls with his son's business partners talking about presumably the businesses and the outcomes and what they were trying to do, whatever schemes they were building out. We know all of this now. We're starting to prove this out. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to show all the evidence to the American people because they don't trust Congress, but I want them to trust the evidence. We now have Shokin in Ukraine who's saying that there was a bribery scheme with Biden. I mean, literally, Biden bragged about on mic. We all know this several years ago, bragging about how he was able to hold money over Ukraine's head, $1 billion, until Shokin got fired.
Okay, we'll show you that in a bit. I have that on another browser. But, we'll see. Like I said with Trump, when somebody's in jail, someone's in jail. Other than that, it's just a waste of my time, right? Women who give birth after IVF may be 66% more likely to suffer a stroke a year later, major study suggests. Of course they do. And then this school right here. Now, I think a lot of those dancing videos are old videos because her voice is deep here, and she's definitely older here than she usually is.
Guys, I'm taking over a live chat right now. Does that mean I'm cool? Am I cool? Most girls say, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Do you really want me to tell you? I didn't think so.
She's got that deep voice. We heard it with her kids. And the majority of times we hear her talk, she's got a very high voice. And now she's got this deep, older woman's voice, and she looks a lot older here. Whatever. Somebody sent me this. Think about that time I went to a planetarium and somebody booed when they showed the Earth. That's great. Okay, so I have to do this section again. And unfortunately, I didn't hit the record button, which sucks. So I got to talk to myself again here. Losing my voice a little bit. Watch Kevin Hart's race with NFL pro that left him injured and wheelchair bound. Because we covered this before. Here's Kevin Hart over here. He's racing and down, get ready to go. And he's running on the street for some reason. And probably because he's drunk. And he's running an NFL player. And he's getting beat handedly. And there you saw him pull up lame at the end there. He runs off to the side. He's wearing a big Hart t-shirt. And right here, he pulls up lame. And then he's got to be in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. Because you don't sprint in the middle of the night when you're drunk when you're 40. OnlyFans owner pays himself $1.3 million a day from adult content site. The owner of UK-based adult content site OnlyFans reportedly paid himself, not fans only, OnlyFans, $1.3 million in bonus money for every working day in 2022. So he paid himself, well, at least 300, probably like almost $500 million. Leonid Rivensky, the 41-year-old Ukrainian America owner and sole shareholder of the company, ranked in roughly $336 million in dividends last year, according to financial statements filed by OnlyFans' parent company, Phoenix International. So they're making bank over at those porn sites. Fired Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shumkin said he believes the Bidens were bribed. I think everyone kind of believes that now, except for the, Biden fans.
Retirement to clean things up. Here's what he said destroyed his life and why he was fired. Listen.
I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that, yes, this was the case. They were being bribed. The fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption?
Yeah, it is, but we will see what happens. We have to do better than Biden, Trump versus Biden. They're both terrible. It tells you why, but we all kind of know that already. Mass teens have been terrorizing a Florida family for over a year. So these kids go up and knock on the door.
A year now.
And they run away, and they do this at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Sometimes they break the door, you'll see that. And they are masking up so the doorbell camera doesn't catch them. And they just keep on doing it over and over again. This guy's going to break the door here. And they run away. This guy's talking about he's trying to kick the door. And he's running away. And that's, good for these kids. I mean, they're not, way to go out and do things in the real world. Way to get off your devices and go have some old-fashioned fun in the real world. Daredevil couple dines at table hanging 290 feet in the air above a rapid waterfall. Jaw-dropping video. There's a video there. Seems kind of pointless. Kim Kardashian desperately embarrassed by ex-Kanye West after NSFY, not suitable for work, moment on boat, report says. He showed his butt in Italy. That's what this one tells you. And she doesn't know what to tell her kids. Family of late swimmer Jamie Kale reject overdose claims she was beaten to death, and photos of her body prove it. I don't know if I covered her before, but she, I don't know. Some controversy there. Colorado middle schooler kicked out of class for "Don't Tread on Me" patch that teacher claimed originated with slavery.
Thank you. Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That's a historical flag.
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed, is due to its origins with slavery and
Revolutionary War.
That is what was, that is the reasoning behind why we do not want it displayed.
So you know nothing about the history of the "Don't Tread on Me" flag?
The Gadsden flag.
The "Don't Tread on Me."
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay.
And I can have you speak to Jeff Yoakum again. Okay. And then.
All right. So the Gadsden flag is a proud symbol of the American Revolution, an iconic warning to Britain or any other government not to violate the liberties of Americans, which I think most of us knew. I mean, it's really old. It's even, predates, all that kind of stuff. So, but I guess the school doesn't know anything about history anymore. Okay, so I got at least one bizarre comment to get to here. I don't know if I'll cover other ones. tomorrow. This person wrote a positive comment to the Shiva deception, and then a negative one. And, well, let's just read the comment, the negative one. I agree with Paul on a lot of things. Oh, so what are you going to talk about? All the things we agree upon? Are you now going to talk about the things we agree upon? No. I agree with Paul on a lot of things, but when it comes to spiritual stuff, he says that he has the truth. The truth is in capital letters with an exclamation point. Beware of anyone saying they know the truth. Truth is unknown. Well, I never said I had the truth. What are you talking about? Like, I've never said I had the truth. I said, this is what I believe. And when I talk about the Sajmarg system and, all of it and my experience with it, I believe it to be the truth. Like, for me, I know it's the truth, right? But I don't expect you to. But I don't say that, right? I don't say this is the truth. It's stupid. Like, what are you even talking about? But that's not the reason I'm covering this comment, but I just want to get to that part first, right? In fact, I say it's experiential system, and people can experience it for themselves. And some of it's speculative. Some of it I've experienced, but some of it I trust because of the experience with the system. But I never said that, right? So this person saying this part, like, where do they get this from? Like, what movie are you watching? Where the person says, he says that he has the truth. I didn't say that. I didn't talk about it like that, right? I don't, and I've said that no one can know God. Like, that's part of the teachings. You can experience God, you can feel God, but you can't know God. So, like, that part, I don't even know where you came up with that. Like, what's wrong with you that you interpret it that way, right? Because I've never said that. I never implied that, and I've said other things that contradict what you're saying. But that's not the reason I cover the comment. The reason I cover the comment is a person says, let me read the whole thing again, but let's focus on the last line. I agree with Paul on a lot of things. When it comes to spiritual stuff, he says that he has the truth. Beware of anyone saying they know the truth. Truth is unknown. Who are you addressing this to? Like, who is this comment even to? Are you some kind of concern troll? Like, is this like a warning? Like, with those censorship warnings they put on the bottom? Like you're trying to give everyone a warning? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what can possibly be gained by someone reading this comment in terms of my videos and me as a person? I'm not asking anybody for anything. I'm not leading anybody to anywhere. I don't even want to, like, interact. I'm not, what are you warning them that I'm going to do to them, right? This is a beware of Paul sign, right? This is a, beware. Beware of Paul. That's what the person's saying. Let me read that part again, right? Let me find the comment. Here it is. Beware of anybody saying that they know the truth. The truth is unknown, right? Beware what? Like, what's gonna happen if you listen to me? Like, what are you possibly gonna? I'm not recommending anything. I'm not selling anything. I'm not telling you what to do. Any of these things, right? But even if I was, what do you mean beware? Like, people can't figure that out for themselves. Like, who are you talking to? Like, you think that everybody's just taking what I have to say as the gospel? No one's doing that. Nobody looks at me that way. No one looks at anybody at the internet that way. Everyone thinks they know more, right? Like, you even said, I agree with you on some things. That's what everyone says. You think there's people out there that agree with everything I say or just take my word for everything as being the truth and change everything that they knew before? And they know a lot more about me or whoever they're watching than you, some commenter, right? Like, you're putting up a red flag there. Beware. He says he knows the truth. The truth is unknown, right? Your comment is utterly pointless. Like, it's just waste of space. Like, waste of time, waste of space. Like, where's the filter? I see this all the time. You have to have a filter whether you're going to say something and whether you should say it or not. And all of us have that where we say something we're like, I wish I didn't say that, right? I wish I worded that differently. Or maybe not say it at all. And there's like so many comments like that. Like, people just think, oh, it's the internet. I'll just say whatever's on my mind, even if it has no point whatsoever. Like the person you're talking to who would find value in this comment is just going to believe everything that everybody says, no matter what. So, like, it's just, if a person doesn't know that the internet's filled with people's opinions, right? And that you don't take everything as like the gospel on the internet, then they have bigger problems, and your warning isn't going to help them. Beware. Beware. I had at least one more thing I want to add tonight, August 31st, Thursday. This video's coming out Friday, so I might add some more tomorrow morning. I'm getting these videos done ahead of time. It's been kind of great, and it's helped. Well, anyways, it's working to my advantage. What I wanted to add here is I had a video entitled Mrs. Fran Drescher. And somebody wrote and said they listened to the video and I didn't mention Fran Drescher once. And then someone wrote, well, it was in reference to Dr. Shiva being Fran Drescher's ex-husband. And I don't know if I mistook the video for another video I made, or I forgot to put important audio in there. And I didn't have time to re-listen to the whole video, and even if I did, I'm just tired to listen to my own stuff after years of editing. Paul Romano, the editor, does not dig Paul Romano, the creator. It's Paul Romano, the editor, is getting sick of Paul Romano, the creator of the videos. And so, anyways, the joke was, I said, well, nobody's going to save the world. And if somebody was, it isn't going to be Fran Drescher's ex-husband, right? Because this whole thing about Dr. Shiva running for president. And I got a message, somehow, because I watched a couple of his videos, the YouTube sent me a message where he said, he's the only legitimate candidate, and that Joe Rogan and these other, that guy, some of the guys who interviewed Bobby Kennedy, that guy, he's a right-wing comedian, a couple other of these guys, right? Tucker Carlson, I don't know. And he said they're scared to interview him, but, the video he put up there only got 2,500 views. The one that said that he was the only candidate, and there was a live video where he had 20 people watching it, right? Like, he doesn't have a big following. Like, he's running for president, but he has no chance, right? And, I said in the thing, paging Mr. Drescher, paging Mr. Fran Drescher. And I don't know if I actually put that in and the person didn't hear it or what. But I thought it was funny and, whatever. So I wanted to repeat it here. But I also wanted to say something else about it. One more joke. The guy claims to invent email, and maybe he did. I don't know. They said he did on Entertainment Tonight. And if he did, good for him, right? That's an accomplishment. I mean, that's no small thing. He invented email. And I can see why he'd be bummed that he didn't get credit. So I don't begrudge him that. But if you invented email, the best you could do was Fran Drescher. Is that your trophy for inventing email? If I think you at least could have got a Goldie Hawn or I don't know, an aging Christy Brinkley or something. I mean, Fran Drescher was the best you could pull for inventing email. But the thing I really want to say here is there are these celebrity truthers. There are celebrities who, were once celebrities, and then they become truthers. And, if they get cut off from the Hollywood community or, whatever it is, right? People who were hobnobbing with the rich and powerful. And then they become truthers. Elon Musk is, kind of somebody a little bit flirting with that. Joe Rogan, of course. People like that are sort of teetering, riding the fence, straddling the fence between truther and celebrity culture. People say they're disinformation, whatever. And then there's people like Isaac Cappy, who was not really that much of a celebrity, but he was enough. He was enough of a celebrity that when he became a truther, he shot up to truther fame almost immediately. Of course, Roseanne Barr to some extent, right? And then, various other people. And then someone like Dr. Shiva, who's, married to Fran Drescher and is a multimillionaire and is, influential in the, whatever it is, tech world or whatever he does. people like that, right, who are part of the club. And, and I have no problem with them doing that. And, I guess to some extent, I don't have a problem with them. I mean, certainly from their side, if they get shot up to the top of the truth community, right, where they have lots more followers and, more excitement and enthusiasm from their fan base, they create a fan base, even though, they're just stealing stuff that many of us did, right? Many of us created these narratives, did the research, and went through the, hard knocks of building this community. And they come in and because of people's, idiot people's celebrity worship, and people think celebrities are better than them. They've just been indoctrinated by the celebrity culture. And so when somebody rich and famous or whatever they are, a politician or anybody flirts with the truth community, truthers go wild. It legitimizes the truth community because some celebrity, when you talk about how bad Hollywood sucks and how degraded it is and how demonic it is, and then when someone comes out of Hollywood and you're like, oh, this person's great. And that's kind of effed up. It just makes the truth community and the truthers look desperate. It's like methinks you protest too much, that you say you don't like celebrities and celebrity culture, but as soon as one of them becomes a semi-truther, you slather all over them, right? And that's on you, whatever. That's, that sucks for you. I don't care. But it's very noticeable and it's kind of embarrassing. And, these people have access to information, like I said, with Kennedy. He can call Dr. Fauci, right? He had conversations with Fauci. He has access to information we don't. And that's, they can do battle with this celebrity, other people. When they say something, people take notice, right? When somebody like me says something, the best strategy is for them to ignore me, right? When I say something about Biden or anybody, Kennedy or anybody else. That's a good strategy on their part. And, I don't mind it because I'm not saying it for their benefit. I'm not looking to have a relationship with them. And, all of us, I'm just, using me as an example, but all of us who are organic truthers that aren't celebrities, their best bet is to kind of ignore us unless we become big enough in terms of our audience base that they have to say something. Or, collectively we do enough that they have to address us as a collective, not as individuals, but as a collective. Because they're on one level, and it isn't a higher level. People think it's a higher level, but they're on one level. It's like they're in one, dimension and we're in another. We're not connected. We're not, we're in different worlds. But what I want to say about this is these celebrity truthers, people who come into the truth community and they're elevated right to the top. They don't have to build an audience. They don't have to win an audience. And, it's not just about winning an audience. It's about learning how to express yourself and do research and, have some sort of a different angle or, do something that makes you stand out and, not even intentionally. You just go through the process of wanting to express yourself. For most organic truthers, we didn't want to become internet celebrities. I didn't even think about that as a possibility, and I don't think of myself even that now. I get 10,000 views per video or whatever, something like that. I don't know what the average is on a daily basis on my channels. But, it's I could just check right now. So this past month, I averaged 4,000 views, almost 5,000 views on my Box of the Future channel. And then on this channel, I averaged about 3,000 views. And so I make a video every other day. So it's 6,000 on this channel and I guess, around 8 to 10,000 on my other channel. And so it might be a little bit more or less depending on how many videos I make. So it's a little, whatever. But it's not that many people, right? It's just, it's something, but it's not I don't consider myself famous. I don't show my face, I'm talking to myself. And so this is whatever it is. But in terms of what this is, I didn't think about it doing, my motivation wasn't to do that, right? There was a little bit of what I was trying to do is promote the, books I was writing and some of the website that I built and some of the other Box of the Future stuff and these ideas. But some of it is I just wanted to express what was going on inside of me, like so many of us. And people do it through comments or, in various ways. People want to express or they talk to their friends and, whatever it might be. You're discovering the nature of your reality and the deception, and also, and you want to say that to people. You want to express it somewhere. You want to talk about what you're going through and what you've learned and what you see, and how you're having epiphanies about life and the beastly system and all of it. You start seeing things and the background. My wife and I were watching a TV show, and I saw the back of a street sign. It was a quick flash. It said "obey," right, and then there was some other word that it said next to it, like two different stickers that were on the stop sign. Someone put an "obey" sticker on the stop sign, and there's oftentimes I'll see 6s in the background. If you're going to see a number, it's going to be a floor or something. More often than not, it's a 6 or any number of things, right? Things that I notice now that I didn't. I'm watching the shows that I watch movies I watched years ago, and I see things differently, right? And I want to, talk about it and express those things, put them into videos. And so, many of us, this was our way of dealing with and processing what we were learning and researching and figuring out for ourselves. And other people were, putting up videos. It became a passion of ours to discuss these things. Like people who are, fans of like Star Trek, or they learn to speak Klingon and they go to gatherings together, and they have these theories about the underlying theories and shows and things, and whatever they have, right? Easter eggs or whatever it is, and people want to they like talking about that with other people, right? And so that's how for many of us we became popular truthers, because of our insights and our perceptions of, not only for me the stuff that I see here, but also my spiritual knowledge and experiences through doing the Sizemore system, which I also like to talk about, right? And so, for me, I'm not talking to people. I'm just talking to myself, and it's like expressing things that are inside of me, getting them out. And then I put them in video format, and, it takes a little bit of practice to talk in a way when you're all alone, like I'm all alone in a room. My dogs aren't even here. And, to talk like this when you're all alone, and then talk in a way that it sounds like you're actually talking to people. Like, I'm talking to myself, but I'm talking to you all. Like, to you, when you're listening, it feels like I'm talking to you, right? And so, you have to learn how to do that. Like, it just doesn't happen overnight. People work in the radio and these things, and, you are talking to people, but you're not. Like, it's a kind of a weird thing. Like, it's going to be, in the future, this recording is going out tomorrow, and you guys are listening to it, right? And, but when I was saying what I'm saying here, no one was here, right? But anyways, as you go through this journey and you start to have a fan base, you have, and I don't like to think of anybody who listens to my videos as fans, because, I don't have fans, but whatever. Listeners, an audience is a better way. That's how I look at it. You develop an audience. There's an audience of people who want to hear you. They're interested in your thoughts. They're interested in your, energy or your jokes or whatever you put together, right? And you go through things. There's hostile comments and, haters, and, you go through the process of having to deal every day with the government's and the media's official story being quite different from your reality, and all the things, your relatives, people, your friends, and, people turning on you, all the things that we go through. And it molds you into somebody. And, you claw and scratch your way against the system that's rigging the, back when I started, I was getting hundreds of new subscribers, like 100 new subscribers per day, my wife remembers, back in, that's 2017. I had this channel since 2007, and it became popular in 2014. And for 3 years, it was growing and, more subscribers. And then they just rigged the system against all of us, right? And just clawing through all that and trying to, manage financially and, make this thing financially viable, because it's a job. And, you have to struggle through all this stuff. And, the people who come in as celebrities that are just immediately given an audience and immediately are, they have supporters and, fans or whatever they are, and they're used to that from their celebrity world. They didn't have to go through what we've gone through. They didn't have to, and they didn't build what we're building here, right? They just came in and decided to drop in and in a way, pilfer. I mean, we've all collectively developed these narratives, so it's a, collective work. It's not like it's copyrighted in these things, but, coming in late to the party and using their celebrity status and, maybe not intentionally, but that's just the way it works, and they're not really conscious of it, right? But they'll never be like organic truthers. You understand this? They're never going to be that way because they were celebrities first and they were part of the club, and they still identify as celebrities. They treat their fans like fans, right? Like, they've just changed their celebrity, fans, that normie fans, for truther fans. And they have a tendency to exploit their audiences, right? There's, that's just what they've been trained to do. And so they're different. And I'm not, saying that they don't do good for the truth community or that they can't be positive. I don't know. Like, that's not for me to, I can see when they're being negative. I see when, someone like Isaac Cappy, who was like a C or D level celebrity, definitely hurt the truth community. Someone wrote a comment today saying Isaac Cappy was murdered, and I don't think he was. Like, who was going to murder? Like, who was scared of Isaac Cappy in the mainstream media? Like, he was just, he had like a kind of some breakdowns, and he enjoyed the spotlight, he enjoyed holding court, but the guy was damaged goods. Like, the guy was, he was a sad figure. He was somebody with, really negative tendencies and some twisted stuff going on. He became a truther and he got a fan base, but, he was imploding. Like, he just destroyed his life, and whatever was going on is he burned all his friends, and, he, whatever it was, like, he just was making things up and making salacious claims, and, he wasn't doing good for all of us, right? He wasn't helping the truth community. He was just using it for, his 15 minutes of fame. And so that's somebody that was more obvious. And there's other people, it's debatable whether they've helped us or hurt us as a collective, and, what they've done, if they've contributed or not, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's not for me to really care about. But I can say they don't have the same experience as us organic truthers. People who went through this journey because we wanted to go through his journey. Like, the journey was what was important. I have a spiritual journey. I talk about my journey series in that sense, and then the element that's the truther journey. But it was something that compelled us to figure this thing out and to try to understand what was really going on. And once we realized the depth of the lies and deceptions from the people who run the system. But I can say I'm very conscious of people who take information, watch videos from somebody and, take their information. Alex Jones was a big person who used to do this. Alex Jones used to, he'd interview somebody, pre-interview them, and say he was going to be on their show. And then he would get all their information that he presented as his own. And like, he and his team did the research. Like, lots of people complained about that. That was just like a real dick move on his part, right? And there's lots of people who are, these celebrity truthers who come in and, Trump did this, politicians, and they use these things and use the community for their own ends, right? They're not really into the thing the way we are. They don't understand it, right? Because they're narcissistic, and we all have our own levels of narcissism, but they're, that's all they think about. That's all they are, is self-involved. And so, they come in and they exploit the truth community. They steal whatever they steal. They get as much money or resources or much fandom and, love and, fan love and all this stuff. Whatever it is that they need to extract from the collective that, that makes up the truth community or their little fan base. And, that some of it's exploitive. Some of it is just, it's like a cancer. It's a parasite on our system, on what we're creating here, right? Because for them, they're just takers. They're just trying to take as much as they can. They're not into it. Like, they're not truth seekers. They're prana drainers, like they're bloodsuckers. They're vampires. They're ghouls. They're, people who are so empty inside, they have to suck the life out of other people. And, you see a lot of that, right? They build a fan base and they con their fans into giving up their hard-earned resources, right? And, where the fans are propping them up and they look at their fans as potential customers. And I I got a little merch thing going, which I begrudgingly did, and whatever it is. Like, people give donations to me, but there's different levels of that, right? Of course I get the ads from YouTube, and I've had to work hard to keep that relationship because I don't really want to be a fan-supported show, right? The fans, if they, again, the audience, fans to you, audience to me, right? If my audience really wants to see my show and wants to see it continue, and I'm not getting enough financial compensation, then, that becomes an issue. There's, of course, the membership program, and I've been wanting to do more for the members, and, I've been working on that, trying to, figure that out. Right now they get a first crack at the Journey series, but, anyways, there's some element of that. But when you go full fan support and you expect the fans support you, and, as things end up in harsh economic times, I mean, this is where YouTube is important. It's essential because without ad revenue, it falls completely on your fans to support you. And people develop these schemes for that, these different programs and different, paywalls or whatever it might be. And so it really comes down to, do they really have something to offer you can't get somewhere else for free? Is there, content so interesting that you feel it's necessary to support them? Or are they creating some sort of scam and sales job, and are they just sort of conning you out of your money and your resources and aggrandizing themselves in some way through their, narcissism that, with you and your weakness and your stress and frustration, what's going on in the world, you buy into it because the person seems like they're confident and they know what they're doing, and you feel so lost that you hand over your money or your time or your energy or whatever it might be to them. And really it's a dysfunctional relationship, and it's a parasitic relationship, and they're not really giving you anything. They're just taking from you. They're just sucking more of your energy and life out of you, along with, your beastly masters. And so, it's just something to think about. Anyways, I'll complete this video tomorrow. Okay, so I had a dream last night, this morning, I guess, actually. And I want to include it here and then do a different version of this on my other video today, because it goes with the end of the video and the voiceover. The work that's been done in the Sizemore system, according to what Babaji said in his diaries and, the information that was put out there as the explanation of this work, the spiritual work, the transmission, the cleaning, and the planning for the future, setting up the historical events that will guide humanity to a desired goal of spiritual evolution, collective spiritual evolution. The access to the yatra points, the yatra, my dog's scratching and it's making a sound. I don't know if you can hear it. He's got dog tags on. They make a little ringing sound. I don't know if it's coming through on the audio. It's a noise canceling microphone. Most things don't get picked up. Anyways, but there's a story behind it, right? There's a story, and more importantly, the story, there is a reason. There's a reason why you were given the transmission and cleaning. Transmission could be used for anything because it's God's, it is source energy. It's the primal energy, right? It's the basis of everything. So it's got the ultimate potential. Chargy would always talk about how when you look at a seed, you open it up and there's like nothing in it. And from this nothing comes a tree, right? Like a sequoia tree or whatever, and the biggest trees in the world. And so you can take the transmission, which people have done in the past, and run with it and use it for something else, and then it would create grossness, and then you would suffer some scars for it and all the rest of it. But its true purpose is to help elevate humanity collectively to a higher state of consciousness and bring humanity into a spiritual state of being, activate the spiritual side that has been dormant for so long, even to the extent that many of the saints, including Jesus, had a spiritual fall because people who rise up spiritually end up being celebrated by humanity. You're celebrated by people, and they get like a celebrity status. And this has happened time and time again where saints, spiritual people, will be celebrated, and they'll lose focus on God, and they'll start serving the people that are there, their followers. And it's kind of the reason why I take the positions I do here on Gratefullness, and people thinking I'm more important than I am or whatever, because it's a negative for me, like it's a negative for the person. There was this spiritual lady. I don't want to call her spiritual because she had bad heart energy. Like she said that about herself. She was a third eye person. And a number of people who took her classes, it's where my therapist found out about, she learned how to channel. The woman I went to eventually told me about Sajmark. She was a counselor. And she had these spiritual lessons she taught. And it was a good class. Like it taught me things that would help me when I started Sajmark. And there were a number of Abhyasis that had gone through her class that, when I met them later on, you were like, oh yeah, she had an interesting class. And she did private readings, and me and my girlfriend at the time went to do her private readings. And she said I had a past life where there's a lot of people who come down and do spiritual work as a soul. And she said that I got, connected to the people. And I forgot about God, these things, right? And she told this to other people, so I don't know how accurate it is, but I feel like there's some accuracy to it. And that, got bummed out by the moaning masses, right? The people can bring you down. You've had all these saints and spiritual people, and their connection to the people that they're teaching can bring them down. And you see it all the time. The people turn on a spiritual person, like you see what happened with Jesus, right? The people where they were following him and loving him, and then they turned on him. 3 of his 12 disciples turned on him. One of them became the president. Peter became the guy in charge of the church. I mean, there's some redemption there. In charge, he said it was 3 out of 12 would turn on him. Like that was the ratio. So 1/4. And so with that, the information also has power and energy in it. And, there are people who listen, you guys, whoever it is, listen to my information, and you could use that information to aggrandize oneself, right? Start their own group, take information that I get from the source and, the teachings of the Sajmark system. Just like you'd ever see that movie with Denzel Washington called The Book of Eli. And there's a guy who wants the Bible. He's running a small town, and they have a water source in a post-apocalyptic world. And he wants the Bible, not because he believes in God or he was a Christian, because he knows the power it would have in terms of getting people to follow him, because a lot of the people have grown up without the Bible. And so he wants the Bible to, get the people to be, he wants to use it to have a religious hold on people. And this guy, Eli, Denzel Washington, has a copy of the Bible, so that's where the conflict takes place. And so, people want to use words like Jesus's words or, spiritual teachings and warp them to their own ends. We've seen that with all these religions. And people can do that with Sajmark. It's what Daji has done, right? What Daji is trying to do. They're trying to make it his own. And, that's not cool. Like, it's not something that you can do. Like, you can't take the teachings that I'm getting from these guys, this source and, these masters and the information, and use it for your own ends to exploit other people. Like, you just can't do that. That's, there's, things that are in place spiritually to stop that from happening. Dodgy's doing it right now, which, that is whatever it is, and the consequence he suffers or whatever. Whatever reason he's doing it, whatever reason the system, the organization has gone the way it is. But the important thing is to remember that there's a purpose for the system. Like Charji had it himself where, Babaji brought him up and made him the Parashad. There was these different cosmic functionaries. The Mahaparashad is this cosmic functionary, which Babaji became. And then he made Charji the Parashad, which is this high-level position that usually goes unfilled and hadn't been filled on Earth before. And Charji was like, oh, I want to die now. Like he was like, he was scared of spiritually falling. It wasn't because he was. And Babaji said, well, that won't happen in your case. But anyways, before he said that, he said, I didn't make you, bring you to this position for yourself. You have work to do. And Charji never shied away from work, wanted to leave. And he thought about it quite a bit, like in his diaries, and you can see it. He thought about just wanting to leave, right? I've been talking about the Oliver Anthony, his second song called Take Me Home, which is to go back home, die and go back to the source. People start feeling that way. And so even Charji, had to be told, you have a mission to fulfill. The person who was as missioned as anybody, in the system. And, Babaji transmitted out to the world. It wasn't just people who did the system. He would transmit to people, and the transmission's available, and people are picking up on it without knowing where it comes from, which is fine, and it's great in some ways, but it lacks the material information that one would need to understand that this is a purpose that's not your egotistical purpose. Whatever you think you're getting the transmission for, or you're getting the energy or the information, because some people just have the information. People come to my channel and they like the energy and they like the information, but they would never do or even try. Their egos wouldn't let them try doing the other parts of it. But there's a reason why the information is flowing through me and coming to people. I actually think I'm going to use this exact voiceover in both my video today, and then this is also going to be part of the Journey series. So you can't use it for something that it's not intended for. Like it's, you can't take the information and aggrandize yourself or whatever to exploit other people, because, the information has a point. And the point is that we have a soul's purpose here. And, if you're to believe what the teaching is in the Sajmark system, and I do, because I've experienced a lot of it, not, a fraction of what's available to experience, but enough to see that, this is, confirmation of the explanation of what's going on, right, and why it's going on. I've had people say to me, well, there's this guru over here, and he says the same thing as Babaji, and there's this, there's these teachings that are similar to Sajmark and these other traditions, and the teachings are the same, but the difference is the yatra points and the transmission and the spiritual evolution that's given. These yatra points, for people who don't know, who don't usually listen to my Journey series, are these spiritual points your soul passes through. And with each one, there's levels of experience and power and elevation of consciousness, and they have these conditions. And each one of them has a temptation for you to just take the power and turn it into your material profit for you, into, material benefit. Or there are spiritual points that are pure bliss. Then when you get to those spiritual points, you feel amazing. And different levels and different experiences. But the tendency would be to say, oh, I'm in heaven now, or I've reached the goal. And it's just, I'm happy, I'm just going to stay here. And you stagnate, and there's spiritual consequences for that. Because they're not meant to be enjoyed. I mean, you can enjoy them in a disciplined way, knowing that it's something to experience and move on from, but not to get lost in. There's some levels of bliss available in the spiritual condition, and it's very tempting for people to want to just stay there forever, right? Just to have the experience of it, like far beyond anything you can experience physically, like the idea of physical pleasure. The spiritual conditions are far more subtle, but also more intense in their way, more true and more sublime. And that's why it's important to have a spiritual guide. There's an importance of the master of the Sajmark system, which is talked about. And, in recent Whispers messages, Babaji's saying you can't rely on the master to do everything, which is the other tendency where you just are too sheepleish in your pursuit of spirituality. You have to be, there's work you have to do. There's things you personally, tests you have to pass, obstacles you have to overcome, things that you have to go through and succeed in. And nobody can do it for you. You can remove yourself from the situation egotistically by remembering God and, minimizing your ego. That's the thing about, like what I'm saying here comes from this dream that I had, this stuff that I was talking about, the dream. And in the dream, people were experiencing these spiritual conditions and, whatever it was that were given by this system, created by, that flowed through Babaji, the second master, Lalji, who made these, the first master system made these sort of discoveries, and Babaji, who made them into a system people could experience, the average person could experience, making it accessible. Because in the past, there's a few saints on the planet, and they, it was like a private club where it wasn't, they weren't excluding people, but people didn't have the ability to do what these saints were doing. Like throughout history of humanity, there were higher developed races with higher consciousness, but I'm talking about the human beings that exist now. The majority of them just haven't flipped the switch yet, and a lot of them are always newbies, first-time souls that are coming into a human condition, coming up for the animal kingdom or something like that. They were a dog or a cow or something in their previous existence, and now have evolved into being a human. Their soul, had that level of, comprehension and experience, right? Human being has more sophisticated experiences and potential. Like, every soul has its potential as a soul, but human beings have more potential to experience divinity, like being aware of God consciously on a mental level. We can understand that there's a soul and divinity, but there's people who just, it's very remedial. They don't have much of a, they don't have the ability for abstract thought, and you can see it as you interact with people. In the past, it was almost everybody. It was brutal times where people were barbaric and, they were low-level consciousness. And even in the Aboriginal cultures that were very pure and very, natural, there wasn't much elevation of consciousness to understand the abstract idea of God and divinity. The concept of zero, for example, and things like this. They had to be brought in and taught to people. But the Sajmark system is available for everybody. And as they do it, their consciousness will elevate. Even if they don't have the ability for abstract thought at first, it'll elevate, and their next life they'll be ready to go. They'll bypass maybe 50 lives it would take to develop that capacity for abstract thought. So there's human beings with abstract thought and human beings without it. But in this stream, there's these people that were having these spiritual experiences, and I knew that they came from Babaji, and I was trying to explain that to them, and they didn't want to hear it, right? Because they felt ownership of it. They felt egotistical, that they had gotten it from themselves. And what Babaji had done, the reason that this is important, was he was probably the person that most minimized his ego This is the second master of the Sajmark system. Like I said, I'm going to put this up on my Apocalypse Now at the end of the, at the end of this video. He minimized it, right? And his ego was almost non-existent. He was just pure service, in terms of his orientation. So it wasn't like he wanted glory or something. But he had to, people needed to know why this opportunity of transmission and the yatra of the soul, which is what separates the Sajmark system from other systems, was given. These movement of these yatra points, your soul going through this evolutionary process, that there was an end reason for this, a divine reason, a divine mandate. And all the gifts that you were given were for that reason. All the experiences, all the elevation. And your ego always wants to make it about itself. That you were getting these things to exploit, to exploit your position. And the temptation is to use this knowledge, get a little bit of spiritual knowledge, as religions have done. And then, people hear the truth of it, and they feel the energy. And then you can subjugate them. You can use it to exploit them in some way and have some sort of cult-like situation. Like that's the, when people get spiritual evolution and they get, they're there to teach people and help to bring people up, but instead they use it to, like the way Jesus is used in Christianity, that he's the only one. And you're never going to, be like him, and that's not Jesus' position. That wasn't what Jesus was teaching. He was teaching, that everybody can do what he does. I mean, any saint, any spiritual person is there to help other people to raise up to that level. And there's a loneliness that goes with it. They feel lonely, right? They feel, that they're there by themselves. So they want to bring people up to that level. It's a loneliness that you feel, and it's a much more refined loneliness as a spiritual loneliness. But for all people who are truthers, who when you're trying to tell your family and your significant other or your friends about these things and they don't get it, and you feel kind of alone, right? You want them to be with you on this thing. You want to have people to talk with it about. You want to share a level of consciousness, and then you end up trying to find people in the internet because you can't find anybody locally who understands the idea of these truther concepts. And on a spiritual level, it's even more refined, and it's a select group of people that can, understand this. And so ultimately, every spiritual saint, every spiritual master wants to find a disciple, somebody to, who gets it and can be trained and, brought up to that level. And the work can continue because there's somebody, a successor. And that's the real tragedy from Daji falling in the tradition, the Sajmark tradition, and doing his own thing, and the degradation of his consciousness. Like he had higher levels of consciousness. I experienced that in him, right? Like I was around him and I saw him being brought up to that level, and then he's degraded into a religion, and his talks are remedial, and they're like for stupid people, and it's like he's lost the gifts that he was given, and it's sad but also tragic, and and in some ways an abomination. But the ultimate idea here is that you're serving God at God's highest level, and God has a purpose for you. Your soul has a purpose for you, and your ego always wants to try to hijack that purpose. And when people get high levels of whatever it is, development, whatever that might be in the material world, and they become famous people, celebrities, and whatever, or people can start seeing them as being different and are attracted to them. The temptation, or the path to falling, the path to failure, is that you start seeing yourself as that, and you forget that God has given you a reason, right? That that you have a divine work to do, that your soul has divine work. And once you forget that, which has happened time and time again in the religious and spiritual tradition, you're screwed. Like you're just You know, I mean, you might come back to it like at the end of your life, but you know, your ego just starts growing. And you know, I've talked about some scars before, and you know how they're looking for the right condition to flower in. But you have to always remember that you're doing God's work, and without a connection to something higher than yourself, you ultimately are going to fall, because you have to elevate yourself. And if you're here giving information to other people like I do on this channel, you have to remember that. And for me, it's very easy, because I remember what I was like before I started doing Sajmark, and I was low functioning. You know, I can't attribute this to my own, what I was able to do on my own. Like I can't say I can do this alone without the connection to something higher. This job here, even just doing this job, what makes my videos, special is my connection to divinity. It's not, me. Like I have personality things that are, interesting to people, sense of humor, whatever. Like I have some abilities and talents and skills, but in terms of my ability to do that on my own, I wasn't able to do it before this connection. And so for that, the Sajmark meditation and the practice and all these things, and that's where I'm able to connect with this information that flows through me that people find compelling. But, it's important that I always point it back that there's, something higher going on here. And that without it, I would just be, some sort of obnoxious, whatever I was before, right? With some, person that was just floundering around without purpose in this world. And whatever, talents or, whatever, intelligence I have, whatever things that were gifts that helped me do this job, I wasn't able to put them together. I wasn't able to sustain anything. And, I just didn't have, all the pieces, right? I didn't have all that I was missing the key component, which is being grounded into something higher than my egotistical purposes, right? My own egotistical pursuits in this world. And, and I didn't really have like ambition like people have. There's some part of me that wanted something, glory or something like that in the beginning, but that's faded, with just minimal success here on this YouTube channel. Like I just don't, thumbs up and people recognizing me for being, special or different, like isn't, like I don't feel anything because of that. When people say, oh, you're great or whatever, like I don't, it doesn't make me feel good. Like it doesn't make me, when people want people to like them or want people to give them praise or things like that. Like it keeps me going because I know that there's, this thing is working. And so it's important on that level, but it doesn't make me feel good about myself. Like it doesn't, like it's not like like people react to getting a thumbs up from people. Look, I got, so many likes. Well, it doesn't matter to me. I don't even look at it, right? I don't, even think about it that way because it's not, a reward for me, right? Like, there's things that you look at, they just make you feel good. Like there are things that I get from this channel that make me be able to relax, which I guess is good. Like things that maybe I'm stressed out about or whatever. And then through this channel that there's just some kind of, feeling of even making the voiceovers themselves, like there's some kind of, or the videos stress related. And like I have this information I have to distribute and it's my job. And until it's done, like there's some level of stress, some level of, this, I got to get this done. Like when you complete a task, there's always a feeling of satisfaction when you complete a task or a goal. But oftentimes people feel disappointed. That's it, right? Even in the Sajmark tradition, Babaji was, brought up to the, the highest levels of spiritual attainment. And he was intercommuning with Lalaji, his, spiritual guru. And he said, that's it? Like, that's, this is it? And Lalaji was like, well, if this condition is so insignificant, I'll remove it from you. And Babaji said, no, I would rather die. So it's a condition that's subtle and, when you go back to the source and you merge back into God, or God merges into you, and there's a distinction there, that it's so subtle and so, like it's almost like a disappointment, because it's not like fireworks, or it's not, some big whatever. But once you've had that, you would never let it go. Like it's like some part of you know that it is, it's like completing something. You try real hard to get to the end of a video game, and you're like, well, I don't feel great. Like the first time I stayed up till like 4 a.m. to I was playing the Mario Brothers game, the first one on Nintendo, and you couldn't stop and start from where you left off. And so you had to complete the game in one, once you turned the machine off, you had to start over, which sucked. And I wanted to get to the end. I got to the end and I felt horrible. Like I was up all night playing video, so, I was tired, and, there was nothing. Like your sense of accomplishment was minimal, because it was a video game, right? But in spiritual tradition, there is a, feeling of accomplishment, but also diminishing of your ego. Your ego gets diminished, so it's hard to feel like, patting yourself on the back for spiritual work well done, because it minimizes your ego, right? But I'm saying all this, to remind people, or if people didn't know, there's a higher authority. And any of the information that I give and the energy that's given here is based in a higher authority. Any kind of insights, anytime I share the prophecies or the whispers of the brighter world, anytime I talk about things, it all is tied into that. Like everything that I present here is a part of, something bigger. And if people were to take this information and use it as a way to exploit other people, or to suck people in, or whatever it is, it would be a bad thing to do. It's just, it will always end badly. Whenever a person takes divine knowledge and uses it for personal gain, it's an issue. Like you always have to have some higher authority. We all answer to a higher authority, or you're a demon, right? Like you either answer to God or you're a demon, right? It's when you don't have, God is the higher authority. And there's a hierarchy there. There's, trainers, gurus, souls that are around you, guiding you. And sometimes they tell you things you don't want to hear, and you give you work you don't want to do, or, they take away things that, that made you feel good about yourself or whatever, right? They show you, that there's a purpose here. And that's been the problem with the human condition, that human beings succeed, especially spiritually, but any success that they have, and they forget about God and the divine energy that helped them. You don't live, you're not alive. You can't exist without divine energy. I've talked about that. You can survive, 40 days without food or whatever it is. I don't know what the record is. You can survive how many days without water, like 9 days, depending where you are. You can survive, 10 minutes without oxygen, without breathing. And you can't survive a second without God's love. I saw my grandfather, my first time I ever saw a dead body was at my grandfather's wake. They put lipstick on my grandfather, who volunteered for World War I when he was 15. He fought in 2 world wars, played professional football, was a fireman. He was like an action hero, right? And he was like a tough guy, and they put lipstick on him. I'm like, my grandfather would never wear lipstick, I looked at him. But when I saw him, I'm like, that's not him. Like I looked at his dead body, and I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. And I'm like, that's not him. It's my first understanding of a soul. His soul has left. The essence that was my grandfather is no longer in him. And, your soul is what animates your body. And, people have body consciousness that they think that's it, and, whatever it is. And they have limited lives, not understanding you have a spiritual essence with a purpose. When people first found out about the soul, the Atman, the original Sanskrit name for the soul was the Atman, right? Which is, beautiful to hear. It's a, word that, has, Atman. And so you have a spiritual purpose, and your ego wants to hijack that purpose. And people's egos doing that has created the world the way it is now. And so getting back to your soul's purpose and grounding your life in a higher authority that keeps your ego in check is essential to successfully living this life. And so few people do it. And your ego is always looking for a way to aggrandize itself. And the ego is necessary, but it has to be trained and contained and handled like your soul's your ego's handler. It should be, but it it often isn't. And so, doing something that is that exploits any kind of knowledge or spiritual purpose or any of these things, taking any of it, divinity, and then using it for egotistical purposes, which of course the religions have done, is a disaster personally. And then you're betraying, and there's some scars you get for that, and like you're betraying the people, you're betraying God, you're betraying yourself, and all those things. It ends in disaster. That's why all these cults end in disastrous results. The person loses a sense of the source once you start going off on your own and denying the information and the discipline and the hierarchical reason for your existence. You're lost, and the people that are with you, that are following you, will get even lost. Like you see the end of any sort of cult organization. It's something that you can say, I work for God, as a way to exploit other people. Like, oh yeah, I work for God, right? Or you can say it to yourself and be aware of it. And you have to say it occasionally to other people so they understand. Like I don't talk about it a lot here, but I mention it, because people need to know. Like there's a divine purpose behind what I do here. And working towards not manipulating that purpose mentally. Not saying, oh, this is, what are you getting out of it? Or what are you ever see the Field of Dreams movies where Kevin Costner at the end of the movie is like, everybody got something but me. Why did I do it? What's in it for me? I built this field, and, there's that moment, right, where it becomes egotistical, but the joy of the work is doing it. You built the field because that was your job. You did it, and you don't need a reward. Like you don't need an egotistical reward, for your work. Like, what's in it for me? What I get out of this? Well, you got to work. You got to do it. You got to participate in the divine experience. What if all the animals in the world said, what's in it for me? Why should I pollinate this flower? The pollinators, or why should I grow this fruit so other creatures can eat it? Why should I, all of it? Like, think about all the things that, the stream, and, why should I continue flowing? I'm just going to, stop here and, celebrate my waterness, like I'm not going to flow down the mountain to give life to other things, right? So, the rain, anything, everything, the tasks that you do, the gratification for doing that task is that you're able to participate in the divine experience. People are the only things on earth that, want something for their doing their job. And they want to get something for themselves. To the point where getting something for themselves supersedes them doing what they're assigned to do here. And that's why we're lost, and we're on the verge of being, wiped off the face of the earth because of the forgetting that you work for God. You have a divine purpose. And, there's consciousness that has caused that, and, an evolution of consciousness and self-awareness that has caused that. And so, that has to be divinized in some way, and there needs to be a discipline and understanding of that you have a purpose, and your soul's purpose, and it's not, most people aren't even close to doing what their soul wants them to do. In most cases, they're doing the exact opposite and making it harder for the soul in future existences, going in the wrong direction, building up some scars and things. And so it's important to remember that. And certainly through this YouTube channel, the energy and the information that's there, it's grounded in a higher, purpose. And like, there's stupid jokes I make and, things that are clearly of human, consumption, human, interest in things. But the overall purpose of this is to remind people that there's divinity within them, and to find that divinity and find what that divinity wants you to do. What's your role here? What's your purpose? What's your place on this planet? And it seems like a simple thing, but it's so lost now. And it's essential in moving forward in a post-apocalyptic world. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up here. Okay, so I went and ate breakfast, and I was going to add this to my Apocalypse Now video, but I'm going to put it in both. The Journey series video. These things are worth hearing over again. Especially something that I don't talk about regularly or at all before. But this idea of compensation for work, and more to do with, this idea of fear of God. So these things I want to expand on here. The first part is that because of the slave labor, wage slave model of monetary reward for your work is the basis of the dysfunction in our system. There's a lot of dysfunction in our system, but the main reason is that. Because I was talking about how when you work for God, you don't work for a vacation, you don't work for, the fruits of your labor. The work itself is the reward, right? And it's a hard thing for people to conceptualize because most people hate their jobs, and you've learned to view school, learning, as a way to get money, right? That's how warped we've become in our system, that you are working for money and you're going to school for money. So when you learn something, it's so you can make money. When you're developing your capacity to understand the world around you, it's so you can make money. And then you get a job to make money. And it's usually something that's unpleasant to do, right? Some people are blessed or cursed to love their work. I don't know which, but maybe both. And that's great. But most people, when they're working, it's something that's hard to do. And if money wasn't involved, you wouldn't do it, right? That's something my brother used to say, a job sucks, that's why they pay you. They pay you for doing something you don't want to do. And maybe you like doing it, but just not every day, 8 hours a day. It's the monotony of the work. It's the specialization of it. But this idea that you're financially compensated for your work has warped people's understanding of the true nature of things, right? Because the work in itself should be the reward. You're given a purpose, you're given a goal, you're given the ability to contribute. It feels good to contribute, right? One of the things when my kids were learning to milk the cows, and they could milk the cow out, they felt good about themselves. And I realized how, farm life's so important in that way, because there's a sense of accomplishment. And, kids wanting to contribute and do some of the work their parents are doing. They're hanging out with their parents and going, or the tribal elders, and they're learning to contribute, and they feel good when they contribute. They feel good, and you can contribute in a tangible way, right? Where money is something abstract. You can give money, but it's the effort you put into the money that's the important aspect. The effort you put out there to make the money is the important part of the thing, right? The money itself is just some bogus scam that they've cooked up to extract work and labor from you, right? And they've made it so that the amount of money you make is the value of your work. Your value of your work is in the amount of money. And there's all these people that move money around, these bean counters and the financial people, and they make billions of dollars, and their work is pointless. It doesn't do anything but make the system more warped and make the system eventually implode from the debt that they're creating, right? The debt is wealth, and the debt that they're extracting from the derivatives market or the stocks and these things, and all these ways that are, it doesn't have any real value, but it's compensated higher than any other work, right? The compensation for these IPOs, releasing an IPO, and these pump and dump scams and all these things are significant, right? I was talking about Vivek Ramaswamy being a billionaire for being a big pharma guy, and these, and being a hedge funder, and these jobs really have no value. They create imaginary wealth of deception, debt-based wealth, and they're viewed as higher level work. Any work that's compensated more, where you have more money, that's the value of your work is in the amount of compensation, because the money is the the goal of your work. So when I, heard this teaching in the Sajmark system, is the reward for work is more work and higher work, then you're given access to higher levels of work. You can do more work through you do a good job and you get more work and you get higher level work, right? You start off at doing menial tasks, and as you evolve, you do higher and higher level work that has more value and more, reward for your soul in the sense of its evolution, right? You're expanding your consciousness and you're given powers and abilities and, what you need to complete that task. When you do God's work, God provides for you the necessary tools and the necessary evolution so you can successfully complete your work. It's a completely different way of looking at, the work that you do. And, when I was in India, they would have these various groups of people that would come in from different parts of India or different parts of Europe or, some other country. And so they would do morning announcements, and they'd announce everything in English, and then usually in Hindi and Tamil, depending on, Tamil's where the ashram was. And if it was, there were people from Kerala, then they would speak in that language or whatever part of India. And, if people were from France, like they have a gathering from people from France, they speak in French, right? And what I started to notice was, it's a volunteer organization. So everybody has to volunteer for work that's given in the organization. And, whenever they used the word volunteer, it was always the word volunteer, right? Like it would be them speaking in some language that I didn't understand any of it. And then all of a sudden you'd hear the word volunteer. And then, they'd say it again. They'd make the same announcement in a different language and they would use the word volunteer. And I'm like, the word volunteer doesn't exist in other languages, right? I mean, in terms of, maybe they've made up a word for it since it's been in English, but you didn't volunteer in ancient cultures. It was just work you would do for your village, for your tribe, for your family. There was no sense of volunteering. There was no, volunteer means work for free. That's what it means. It means work without financial compensation. But before that, there was no financial compensation. There was no word for volunteer, right? And so, this idea of compensation for your work didn't exist. You work because you had to. You work because you must, right? You work because it was your purpose. But when they created this bogus financial system, and especially now with the debt-based aspect of it, people are looking for reward for doing what they're supposed to do anyway. And that has made it even harder to convince people to do the right thing, just to do the right thing. Because it's what's in it for me, right? What do I get out of it? Where's my compensation? I'm undercompensated financially for what I do here compared to other people. Like I think my content is better than, what other YouTubers and, whatever is available here, but also people do similar things. And, in terms of the level of information here, but, of course I lack the ability to bring people in and, to pander to my audience and do things that would help with that, right? And of course, going against the system. But I'm undercompensated on the financial level for the work I do here, at least in terms of the way I view it. But I don't think about it very often, only when it, is obvious to me to think about, right? For something brings it to my attention. Because when you think about it that way, then you're like, well, why should I bother doing, like, I'll do less good at my job, right? I'm not being paid enough, so I'm only going to work to the amount of money that I'm getting, right? This is, I'm making less money now, and so my videos are better, and I'm making less for them. And so if I viewed it as a monetary compensation situation, I would try less hard, right? I would make less content. I would withhold information because, I would maybe say, all right, this level of information is only for the people who are going to pay me, right? This kind of thing. Put up a paywall for, whatever it might be. And so, that's the way that we're trained to think about things. People holding out in professional sports because they're not getting compensated enough. They see they're being underpaid, so they refuse to do their job. which is a really bad thing, because the reason you do your job is because your soul has a purpose here, and God has a role for you to play. And if you don't play that role, then you have a failed existence. And almost nobody really plays that role to the level that they're supposed to play it to. So tying this to the celebrities, people who went after celebrity wealth and fame, and they got it and it sucked, or they got kicked out, or, whatever happened to them. This idea of working for celebrity, working for, posting things for thumbs up or likes, for pats on the back or compliments or whatever, financial compensation, whatever it might be, wealth and fame, things that people desire in the American and worldwide experience, it warps you and you lose sight of your true purpose, right? And so going back to what I was saying earlier about this, I want to include this part. This is the part I forgot, that I didn't leave in there. And that is God working to motivate your ego. The divine, there's divine beings here that are, etheric beings, what people would refer to as angels. You have your own spiritual support team, and your soul is a part of that. And they're always trying to convince your ego to do the right thing for the right reasons, to do the right thing, to do what you're supposed to do. And we all need that. Like, we all need cajoling, and, sometimes we need, a slap in the face. Sometimes we need, a little spiritual support, but sometimes we need a vivid dream or something to get us to make the right decision. Like, our egos get locked in, we get selfish, we get entitled, we get, we forget the big picture. And what religions teach you is that you do it because God is an a-hole and he's going to punish you. Like, that's very specific to the Judeo-Christian tradition, especially in the Old Testament. God's a real dick in the Old Testament. He is, narcissistic, and if you don't do what he tells you to do, he punishes you. And sometimes he punishes you anyway. He's very petty, and it's really a demon. That's why the problem with that religion is, those religions, is they're worshiping a demon, because God doesn't use force. And you can prove this out. Like, you can figure this out for yourself, or anybody, can figure this out just based in the idea that we have freedom of choice, right? So God could create a world where he forced you to do everything the divine way, that there was no other choice, that there was just the divine choice. And on a soul level, you can reach a level where that's where you are, where your soul no longer has a choice. You've given up your freedom to choose wrong. Because freedom of choice is only the freedom to choose wrong, to choose something other than divine choice. And that's, kind of mind-blowing if you understand it. That there's one right choice, there is the divine choice, the choice of your soul. And then there's an infinite amount of wrong choices that we can explore and we can experiment with. And God wouldn't give you that if he was going to force you to make the right choice, right? You understand that no force is being used. The freedom of choice to do the wrong thing means that there's no force through God to do the divine thing, to do the right thing. God isn't making you do that. So there's no thought of threat or fear of God. That's humans who are using God to get you to do the right thing. And sometimes it's, for good reasons, like don't murder, don't kill, right? Like things like that, the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are very remedial. And the idea is that there's punishment if you don't follow those commandments. But you could think about the saints of that time, the spiritual people, who are trying to get people not to kill or steal or, do all the bad things that the commandments are telling them not to do. And they're like at their wits' end. They're like, well, God will punish you if you don't do it, if you do the wrong thing. Because that's the level of the consciousness that people had in that place, in that time. And so I understand it. Like, it's not like, spiritual people or kings or rulers, they were dealing with low-level behaviors like we see now in our society. Rules and laws, and you have to, threaten people with punishment. There's lots of people who, there's this kid I was counseling, and it was back when Eminem was big, and it's a white kid who was, who was into Eminem, and, he had sexually abused his dad was going to marry a woman, and she had a daughter, and he sexually abused the girl so his dad wouldn't marry the woman. Like, he was that kind of manipulative and creepy. And we had this conversation where I was trying to tell him, you know, that people won't murder for, his position was that people only murder because they'll get thrown in jail, won't murder because they'll get thrown in jail. Like, there's no other reason people wouldn't murder. That people would be murdering people all the time. This guy's a sociopath, right? The only reason they wouldn't is because they go to jail. Like, he was learning that because of his actions, he ended up in treatment. And the only reasons not to do those things were because you would end up consequenced and be part of the criminal justice system. You know, that was his level of comprehension and his level of evolution. He couldn't see that people had internal morality and they would do things, they would not do things, bad things, because of, you know, a conscience and other internal things, because it made them feel bad, or they, you know, they just didn't want to hurt somebody else. Like, they had compassion. Like, he couldn't understand these things. He lacked all of those things. And there are people like that in our society. And so there has to be that level of rewards and punishment and remedial type of, you know, an overbearing system to keep those people from doing those things, right? Because otherwise they would do them. Of course, there'd be divine consequences eventually, but sometimes those are actualized through the system. But God doesn't do that. God doesn't use fear. God doesn't use, you know, these levels of oppression. He doesn't force you to do anything. You know, God and divinity and your soul has to win your ego over and get you to choose the right thing. And that's a very important distinction in the Sajmark system of teaching and understanding the ways of divinity. That God doesn't use force, that you have the freedom to choose the wrong thing. And so the whole problem with planet Earth, all the stuff that we see, all the stuff that I cover on my YouTube channels, all the things that we see as, you know, the disaster that is the human experience right now, has to do with that problem. How do you get humans to do the right thing? God and your soul are finding ways to, you know, your soul is working towards getting your ego, which your soul creates, your subtle bodies, your ego, right, is a creation of your soul. How to get it to answer to a higher authority, how to get it to connect with your soul and take guidance and make the choices your ego doesn't want to make. Inevitably, there are things your ego doesn't want to do, work you don't want to perform, attitudes you don't want to take, pleasures and addictions that you want to indulge in that you're not supposed to, things like this, right? That's all this is. All the spiritual teachings, all the religions, all the saints that have been here, all this, you know, whatever is going on here in terms of this battle to get your ego to choose the divine choice. Time and time again, not just once, but continually choosing that path. I mean, that's the problem of humanity, that people don't want to do that. Their egos don't want to do that. And more often than not, they'll choose the lower choice. And sometimes they'll choose the lower choice just out of sort of spite or, you know, F you God, or, you know, whatever. Just because they can, not because they even, you know, they know they're not going to enjoy the, you know, whatever they're going to do. They just do it anyway. Like, people have a, you know, just to have the power to choose. Like, think about all the things in our system about freedom of choice. Things that are, you know, of course, the abortion, but also the right-wing elements that we get to choose things. We get our, you know, our choices. We get our freedoms. And freedom is just the freedom to do wrong. Freedom is actually a bad word. Like liberation, you know, the ability to transcend your human experience and get rid of your earthly bondage is another sort of freedom. Spiritual freedom is another sort of freedom of your body, freedom of the physical laws that dominate your physical existence, your body's demands and needs. Like, those are all, you know, there's a, your need to eat and breathe and drink water and procreate and do all the things your physical body needs. And then, you know, you don't have that. Like, if you're not in a body, you don't have those demands, constant demand to do work so that you can survive. Your survival, keeping your body going, provides effort and work and energy into your survival. You think about how much of your day is consumed by some elements of keeping your body going. And sometimes it's just R&R and relaxation and doing things that recharge you from a dysfunctional system that keeps you going and keeps you from becoming depressed and suicidal or whatever it is. And so all those things, addictions, all the things that people do that they indulge in to keep their bodies moving, keep their motivation there to keep on chugging along in this human experience. And that dominates our existence. And then there's all the indulgences and the choices to do wrong that are encapsulated in that. But if we all just were forced to do what we were supposed to do, there would be, a completely different system. We would all be doing what God wants us to do and our souls want us to do, but it would be forced. There wouldn't be any learning. There wouldn't be any, sometimes mistakes have benefits, and mistakes are not mistakes in the sense of they lead to divine revelation and redemption and things, and, appreciation and gratitude of things that we were not conscious of, right? You have to be cut off from God to appreciate God, right? You have to be, disconnected to understand what it feels like to be reconnected to God. Now, if you were connected to God all the time, you wouldn't feel the difference. You would never know what it feels like not to be connected, right? It's like when you love somebody and there's a separation there, like ultimately a death or something like that, and you really feel the pain of separation. But when you're with that person, you loved them and you felt, positively to them, but you don't feel the depths of your, feelings until you're separated. And so these are the elements of the system, and, something that's more mature in the sense that force isn't being used to make you behave the way that God wants you to behave. That it's something that you have to rise up to and choose to do. But you have to understand the choices. And without connection to the teachings and the human side of things, and the teachers themselves, and if you just take the information and use it to create your own little thing or whatever it is, then it's lost. That opportunity is lost because you don't understand the reason for the transmission, the cleaning, and this opportunity. And that, is important. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up here, and I'll continue on as we move forward.